Module 2 of the Greenhouse and Floriculture class. Today we are going to focus on seed germination and sowing seeds. Here are the supplies that you will need. You will need some type of heat source. We could use this as a humidome, also a heat mat, which you will be shown later in the video. You will need a germination tray with soil. You will need a ruler, some tape, a writing utensil, the seeds of your choice, and a pair of scissors. Before we start, we're going to talk about the differences in seed trays. In the video that you're going to watch after this, the YouTube video that talks about seed germination also, he references what he calls a 72 cell germination tray. The difference between a cell germination tray and a seed flat or germination flat is that the flat is basically just an open basin where we can control how much soil we put in. We actually make rows, which you'll see later in this video also. I like to use them for germinating vegetables. I also like my students to use them so that they can understand the concept of how important it is to be careful when you are sowing seeds. So we have these two types of germination trays. If you'll notice, the one on my right has holes in the bottom, the one on my left does not. The one on my left is generally used for hydroponics. When we are not using soil to plant seeds, we use some type of rock wool cube instead, and it's important for the water to stay in. However, when we're working with soil, it's important for us to have these holes so that we have the proper drainage for our germinating trays. If we end up getting a lot of water stuck in the tray, our seeds will end up getting too wet, rot, and they won't germinate. What we're going to do is we are going to look over the different types of, or the different amounts of soil that we can use. The tray on my right has soil filled halfway up the tray. The soil on my left is a lot fuller. When we are germinating, seeds do not need a ton of soil, and because this soil is considered sterile, it's gone through a pasteurization process. It doesn't have rocks, it doesn't have sticks or leaves, it's clean soil. Once we use this, it's considered not sterile anymore. So instead of wasting half of the soil that isn't really needed during germination, we're just going to fill our tray up halfway. Before we actually start our sowing process, another important thing is to make sure that you have your trays labeled. Labeling is really important. It gets rid of a lot of confusion that comes later in the planting season. What we're going to do is we are going to plant peppers today, and I've already cut off the top for ease of this video, but these peppers are called pepper yellow bell. So what we're going to do is we are going to take our writing utensil and just take some masking tape, and the first thing we're going to write on our tag is today's date, 5/24/16. The reason we put our date on is because different seeds have different germination rates. Some seeds will germinate within 1 to 2 days, others take up to a week. So if we have a tray, but we don't know when it was planted, and let's say it's at day 20, maybe it just didn't germinate, or maybe it hasn't reached its germination date yet. The next thing that we're going to put on here is the exact name that is found on our seed packet. So I'm going to write pepper yellow bell. The reason I'm being so specific in my labeling is because maybe I also want to have hot peppers or green peppers or maybe some Anaheim peppers. So if I just put pepper and then I have 4 trays of peppers, I don't know specifically which tray is which type of pepper. If you're working in a greenhouse and you're planning on selling these items, that's important to know because consumers like to know what they're buying. They don't want to be surprised later in the season. So I'm going to take this off, and I'm just going to place it on the end of my germination tray. The reason I put it on the short end is because when I use my tables, I stack my trays like this. So if I walk by, I can just bend over, look and see that that's a pepper yellow bell, and I can move right along. If I put it on the long end, that means I have to have trays like this, and I can't fit as many trays on the table that way. Plus, if I put another one in between, this tray, I have no idea what it is. I have to actually move trays. It just makes it a lot more easy if you put them on the short end and place your trays at the end of the table like this. So next is we are going to start the sowing process. There's a couple options that you can do this. You can use your finger, you can use a writing utensil, but my favorite is the ruler. I'm going to show you some differences between the writing utensil and the ruler to show you why I like the ruler better. Here we're going to take this large writing utensil and we're going to make some furrows. If you'll notice, the writing utensil pulls a lot of soil to the right. The furrows are a lot deeper. I don't really have as much control. Now, if I take the ruler and I press it down and wiggle it a little bit, press it down and wiggle it, it gives the rows a lot more uniformity. There's not extra soil stacked up along the sides, and it's just a nice clean line. When we're germinating or when we're sowing seeds, I get pretty specific about the steps that I like my students to use. So we're going to take these pepper seeds out, and if you completed Module 1 and looked at the PowerPoint of different types of plant seeds that are common in the garden, you should notice that these are a pepper seed. We'll place the rest of those peppers there. What we're going to do is we're going to take one seed and we're going to sow it into the row. Then we'll take another single seed and we will also sow it. Now, when you are in a class full of high school students, sometimes they get a little crazy and they like to do this because they want their job to be done a lot faster. Now, yes, these seeds will germinate and they'll be great, but when it comes to transplanting season or transplanting time, those are going to be a lot harder to transplant than the seeds that I have evenly spaced. So you'll continue to fill up your tray until all of your seeds are gone. If you have a tray that has, maybe you got a tray and a half of the peppers, and I have some tomatoes right here that I would do next, and maybe I have a tray and a half of tomatoes, what I would do is I would combine the trays. So I have a tray that's half tomato, half pepper. The way that I would identify that is by making another label, and I would put bell yellow with an arrow, and then I would put a line, and then I would put Roma tomato or Roma with an arrow. That way, if I have a tray that I'm going to be doing half and half, I can stick it on here and I can look. I would place them right next to my others. I can put it on here and I can say, oh, this half is peppers and this half is tomatoes. That way we're not wasting soil, because like I said, soil's kind of expensive. So what we're going to do after that is we are going to cover our seeds. Now, an important thing, another reason why I use the ruler is because the furrow that I use with the pin is a lot deeper. Some seeds do need light in order to germinate. So what we do is we will just take our fingers and we'll carefully pinch over the top of the seed. We don't want it to be buried into the very bottom of the tray. We just want it to be lightly covered so the light is still allowed inside or goes through the soil for correct germination. After that's done, we are going to take our misting nozzle. If you are working at home with like a watering can, you might want to be extra careful. The reason I like the misting nozzle is it has small droplets and there's not a lot of pressure, so it doesn't blow my seeds out of the furrows that we just made. So I'm just going to lightly mist, and at first it's going to look like it's not doing anything. It's going to take some time. So you'll mist over your entire tray, and the way that you know when you're done misting is you basically weigh the tray with your hand. So I know that I have watered because the tray is heavier than it was without water, but it's not quite as heavy as I want it to be. If you water too much, that's also okay, because we do have the holes in the bottom of the tray to allow for the escape of the water, so it's not puddling out. So we're going to water this really good. And then we need some type of heat source. Like I said earlier, germination requires humidity. So if you have an awesome greenhouse climate where your fans work all the time, and your thermostat works perfectly all the time, you could just leave this tray out and it could germinate. Now, not everyone has the ideal situation, so some other ways that we can get humidity without a super expensive greenhouse is by the humidome, which you guys saw at the beginning of this video. You take the humidome and you cover it and you stick it on. What the humidome does is it basically captures the heat that's in there, it takes the heat of the greenhouse, the water from the soil, and it creates humidity within the dome. Similar to a small greenhouse that sits on a table. Another option is if you don't have a humidome, you can buy what's called a heat mat. We'll take our tray over here to the heat mat. The heat mat is just a black piece of basically a thicker plastic. It has cords down in the middle of it and it creates a heat source. So we could not have a dome, we could place it on a heat mat. The humidity in the greenhouse or your house, using the heat from the mat and the water from the soil would create enough humidity to have the seeds germinate. As far as the next video goes, he's going to discuss another way to germinate trays, the one that's found on YouTube, but I hope that you enjoyed this video of Module 2 and seed sowing.